And joining us now to discuss the matter of the newly approved aid for Ukraine is Stephen Moore, founder of the Ukraine Freedom Project. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Hey, great to be with you.
So I want to ask, what is the mood in the United States after that vote was passed in the House of Representatives on the matter of the aid for Ukraine?
Well, if you're pro-Ukraine like I am, it's a cause for celebration. There's a feeling of elation. There's a feeling of relief. Now, if you are not pro-Ukraine, there's a lot of anger. I just got off a conservative radio show in Michigan, and let's just say the host was not as diplomatic as you are.
Well, now, what are the arguments that are being used to not support Ukraine? I know there's a lot of false narratives, and I know it's very difficult for Americans to understand why is it that they should support Ukraine, which is light years away in many people's minds. But what are the main arguments? Is it still the crisis on the southern border in the U.S.?
Yeah, that's a big part of it, and like you say, there's a lot of false narratives out there. And I don't need to tell the people in Poland about Russian propaganda. But the American Foreign Policy Council estimates that the Russians spend between $1.5 billion and $2.4 billion annually on misinformation and deception. And a lot of that's targeted towards conservatives in the United States. So a lot of people are asking, why did this aid package take so long? And I would answer that, the unlikely thing is not that it took so long. The unlikely thing is that it happened at all. Because, on this conservative radio show this morning, it was, why aren't we doing something about the southern border? Why is NATO encroaching on Russia? Russia's never going to go into a NATO country. And thanks to you guys, I frequently say, well, that's not what Poland thinks. So it's a bunch of Kremlin narratives that are coming out, and there's a high correlation in campaigns in America between whoever spends the most money and who wins. And so Saturday was the first big victory in the information war for the good guys.
So now what about, because you mentioned NATO, how important, I know the bill still has to go to the Senate, but of course President Joe Biden has said that he's just waiting for it to be passed there, then he's going to sign it. But how important is the fact that this decision was made in terms of unity amongst NATO members?
Yeah, I think it's great. And I think if there's a silver lining here, is that there's NATO countries who are not as aware or as active as Poland is in this war in Ukraine. And I think that this 6-month period, which of course was horrible for the Ukrainian people, the silver lining is that some of the bigger NATO countries that need to step up more have recognized that, maybe the USA is not going to be there all the time, and which is important because we are in a global conflict. Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, they're the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and they're all working together. And so we're going to need all the firepower that Europe can muster if they need to rebuild their industrial base and defense industrial base. And this is a good wake up call for them.
Right. I think you're absolutely right when it comes to that. And the decisions that we're seeing made today are not going to make a difference on the battlefield for months to come. There's usually quite a lag time between the decision-making process and actual results on the front lines. But that being said, we know that we have this package coming through. Maybe in the next week or so, Ukraine will start getting some relief. But do you think it's going to be enough, this $61 billion package for Ukraine to make to turn the tides or make some progress?
Well, I've been told that there's C-130 airplanes lined up at U.S. air bases to get weapons to Ukraine. And I hope that's true because the Biden administration has a pretty poor record of getting weapons to Ukraine quickly. I mean, it took 10 months to get 31 tanks to Ukraine last year. The Biden administration seems to want Ukraine not to lose. But again, they've been telling the Ukrainians this year, don't hit refineries in Russia. right? Which is just a painful message to hear when, the Russians are attacking Ukrainian energy infrastructure. And so what needs to happen here now is, now that we've gotten through this through Congress, pro-Ukraine activists need to hold the administration's feet to the fire, that they're going to get this stuff quickly, they're going to get the right weapons. And the good news about this bill is that it mandates that Biden send the long-range ATACMS that the Ukrainians really need to be effective.
So now this brings me to my next and probably last question. Why is it so important that the Ukrainians get these ATACMS as soon as possible?
Ukrainians need to win, and they need to and they need to be able to hit targets inside Russia. You can't win a war when you're fighting it on your own territory. You need to make the Russians aware that they're in a war. One of the ways to make the war end is to make the population of Russia aware that they're in a war. And, and I'm not saying hit civilian infrastructure, but energy infrastructure seems to be, like a viable target. So I think that the longer range weapons are going to give Ukraine some of the edge it needs to actually inflict damage on Russia.
Right, and hopefully take some of the pressure off the front lines there.
That's right.
Well, Stephen Moore, founder of Ukraine Freedom Project, we appreciate you joining us and discussing this topic. As always, thank you for joining us, sir.
Great to see you guys. Let's do it again soon.